invitation.
Oh, really?
I have more nice things to say about the invitation now. I have more nice things to say about it. Because the invitation looks great.
The invitation does look very good.
The invitation looks great.
I don't know.
I thought it looked okay.
Though, granted, had I done any research, I probably would have said no to Your Next because it's Adam Wingard. The same motherfucker who did the live-action Death Note.
Oh, he did that? Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, had I known it was Adam Wingard, I would have said, no, we're doing It Follows.
Oh.
But hindsight's 2020. I need to do more research.
Maybe we should have done It Follows instead. I don't know.
It is what it is. I think we will have I think actually we won't. But all movies are a learning experience. I don't think there's ever a movie that doesn't teach you something. I
think this will be an interesting conversation because I want to drill down into why people like these movies.
Yeah, I'm going to try. And I think I remember one guy, because I think, have you ever heard of the channel Your Movie Sucks?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
And I have some issues with his channel, but sometimes he does give some pretty insightful commentary. He kind of says that Adam Wingard's films are they just do the cliches, and people think that they're doing it tongue in cheek and ironically, but there's nothing really there to support that. Mm-hmm. And I'm just really curious what creates that reaction of he's doing cliches ironically.
Yeah.
When there's really nothing in the presentation that supports that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the main reason I wanted to do Your Next was because Darren Franich said he really liked it. So
okay, well, we've done stuff because Darren Franich liked it before.
Yeah, I don't know.
We haven't been always disappointed.
It Follows tends to, I think, get more critical praise than Your Next.
That was kind of one of the holy shit, horror can be good.
Yeah. And I've seen modern horror movies that I liked. That movie Green Room that came out last year was actually one of my favorite movies of the year.
I've heard a lot of shit about Green Room. I kind of want to see that.
I think that movie would only play better now, quite frankly.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah.
Because it involves neo-Nazis.
I mean, speaking of Nazis, I want to see Imperium, the Daniel Radcliffe movie.
Ooh, I heard about that too.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating.
That could be interesting, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Week is another week.
Ooh, that could be very interesting.
That actually could be really fun.
That might attract the wrong crowd. I don't know. But hey, welcome back to the Hack Fraud Show. And as promised, this is wildly disappointing modern horror movie week.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
Oof.
Okay, but
cards on the table here. Okay, so people talk a lot about how kind of the horror genre is going through kind of a renaissance period right now, and I have tended to stay away from horror movies for a long time, especially modern ones. So I was kind of maybe it would be a good idea to try and catch up a bit with these modern horror movies.
To see what the hubbubaloo is. I was on board with this because keeping up with modern trends is something that is good if you're someone who studies film.
Yeah,
it's kind of necessary, if anything.
Yeah, and if anything, Get Out only enhanced our desire to explore this phenomenon.
That's the problem, is that we thought we were going to keep getting Get Out, and oops. I guess that's just a great movie. It's like when Clay was talking about when he first saw Saving Private Ryan. He said, "Oh boy, I have to watch a bunch of World War II movies now." Oh boy, Saving Private Ryan is just a great movie.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna talk about The Invitation and Your Next. I think we may have an interesting conversation because there are aspects of both of these movies that I do like.
I think The Invitation we'll be able to have a real conversation about.
Yeah. So I'm interested in drilling down. These movies also represent a lot of things about kind of modern indie filmmaking that I would like to discuss maybe a bit.
Yes, I would like to discuss that too.
So we will get to all that in a few moments. But first, gentlemen, what have we been watching? And I actually have a lot to talk about this week, so let's start talking.
I only have one movie, and we all saw it.
Oh.
So we should discuss that at a later.
Yep. Let me talk about what I was, because I think it's only one real thing I need to talk about. This is another documentary, which actually, I really like this documentary class. I've been watching some pretty interesting stuff. I watched a film called The Year of the Pig, which is a film about Vietnam, but like not in so much about like the war itself. Like that's mostly near the end, but it's about like Ho Chi Minh and Vietnamese nationalism and French colonialism and like the American extension of that French colonialism. And you just get like a bunch of like talking heads and interviews and just speeches from political figures and sometimes lesser political figures who say things like, I wouldn't give up a single American for 50 dead Chinamen. That's a real thing that's in the movie.
Yep. And
it is utterly fascinating, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I really loved it. I loved how much it just drilled down into colonialism and how the American War was an extension of that. I loved how like the American view of Vietnam completely places the Vietnamese themselves in absentia.
Yeah.
We just think about it as the war that cost a lot of money but did nothing.
Yeah.
We think about it internally. We don't think about things like, we don't even think about like even Ho Chi Minh or the actual North Vietnamese army. We just think about like burning village. We just think about burning general impromptu villages. We think about war riots, and we think about lots of money lost.
Yeah.
And this movie is explicitly about like drilling down into that at a time when like this was all going on.
Right.
This is during the period.
Yeah.
And,
This movie came out in
really fascinating.
This movie came out in 1968.
Exactly, and it is just it almost seems to have a hindsight that is almost shocking.
Yeah,
and I absolutely love it. And like, if you have any interest in the Vietnam War, I'd highly recommend. I'm curious how it would fit with like the new Ken Burns Vietnam series, which I've seen a little bit of, and I really like.
I really would like to see the Ken Burns. That's something I've been planning to watch for a while. If I can find the time.
Yeah, but like if you have any interest in the Vietnam War, I think you'd really love it. I think it is just like a really concise, a wonderfully put together, and strangely balanced view of Vietnam. Well, granted, it has the thing where it's like it presents us two sides, but like the two sides are buttressed by their framing. As far as like when we see the anti-war perspective is given to us by like talking head, like intellectuals and people like that. Whereas, like, the pro-war stance is given just by, like, politicians giving speeches. There's kind of a weird dissonance given to that.
Right.
So, yeah, I thought it was really wonderful.
Okay.
I highly recommend it to both of you.
Well.
Year of the Pig.
The Year of the Pig. I will have to check that out.
It has no relation to the song The Year of the Cat.
Okay. Or The Hair of the Dog.
Or The Hair of the Dog.
Yes.
Tyler, what has been your extensive viewing habits?
All right. Well, there's one movie that we all saw, which we'll get to eventually. Let's see. At the recommendation of my roommate, I watched 2017's It Comes at Night.
Ooh.
Was that? Have you heard anything about this movie?
I know it exists.
Okay.
That's so bad.
It's a very strange movie. It is good. I didn't like it nearly as much as my roommate does, but it's interesting. So basically, it's kind of like I describe it as like Through a Glass Darkly meets The Road, but less good than that sounds. It's like a, I don't want to give too much away. Well, I mean, I might as well. I don't know. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic scenario, the nature of which is not entirely clear. You have this family led by patriarch Joel Edgerton, living in a house kind of out in the middle of the woods. It's interesting. It struck me how much this movie, it felt very Bergman-y to me. It felt like a very Americanized version of a Bergman movie at some places. It really did remind me quite a bit of Through a Glass Darkly, at least for like the first 2/3 of the movie. The last third gets crazier and a little more, not unhinged, but like a little more, I don't know, conventionally kind of action-y. Although the approach to it is not super conventional. This movie does raise some interesting questions and some kind of like moral things, and it is well done. It looks very good. There's a lot of great kind of stateliness to the way it's shot and the way it's composed and everything, and the cinematography is very well done. Overall, I was kind of underwhelmed, but it's definitely a very solid movie.
This sounds like something I would like. So it comes at night.
Yeah, you might like it. You might not like it.
I really like Bergman. So
I may be overselling the Bergman comparison, but that's just kind of what occurred to me.
It sounds more interesting than what we watched. So
yeah, it kind of was. But that movie's interesting. So there's that. I also watched on Saturday morning. My roommate and I, same roommate, were scrolling through Netflix looking for something to watch, and we happened upon a movie that I knew was coming out but had forgotten about and did not know the release date, so I did not know it was out already. But we happened upon the Netflix distributed film Noah Baumbach's The Meyerowitz Stories.
Oh yeah, you told us about this.
Parentheses, new and selected. And I'd completely forgotten that this movie was coming out this month, and I usually don't. If a movie is in select theaters, I usually make an effort to go to the theater and seek it out. But that's my general rule too. But with it right in front of me, we decided, let's watch it. And I'm glad we did, because this movie is great. It's a real. I don't know if I could say it's a return to form for Baumbach, because his last couple of movies have been very critically acclaimed, even though I haven't really liked them. Yeah. But this. I can't take credit for this because my roommate came up with it, but it really is very much like kind of Squid and the Whale meets the Royal Tenenbaums, and that is just wonderful to behold. It concerns basically this very kind of not large family, but like family with a lot of like complicated relations. Like the dad, played by Dustin Hoffman, has been married 4 times and had children with different women. So there's 3 adult siblings played by Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller, and I do not know the actress's name offhand. Perhaps I should look this up. But they all kind of converge in New York City to kind of visit their father for not all for the same reason, but like Adam Sandler is taking his daughter to college, and Ben Stiller comes for a different reason. I'm not sure exactly. I don't know. Suffice it to say,
everyone's together.
Yeah, everyone does get together, and then kind of about halfway through the movie, Dustin Hoffman is suddenly beset by a disaster which lands him in the hospital, and they all kind of have to reckon with this and reckon with the possibility of their father's death. And this movie's just great. It feels like...
this seems like nothing like Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah. No, it definitely feels like that, but it does kind of put its own spin on things, and it's very fun and very, very funny. I was laughing all through this movie, but it also has some great dramatic moments. Dustin Hoffman, I think, is basically playing an older version of the character that Jeff Daniels played in The Squid and the Whale, which is basically Noah Baumbach's father. And he's great. Dustin Hoffman is great. Adam Sandler is great. Ben Stiller is great. Like, Emma Thompson shows up in like a kind of what seems like a thankless role, but then she gets like this great little monologue about how like she's worried about losing Dustin Hoffman, and like it's just a wonderful, wonderful movie. And
this sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it immensely. There's all kinds of great stuff in it. There's a hilarious sequence where Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller smash up a car, followed not too long after by a scene where just a heartbreaking scene where they speak at an exhibition opening exhibiting their dad Dustin Hoffman's sculpture work, where they have to speak about where they like speak to open it, and it just quickly devolves into them like talking about their relationship with their father to a crowd of befuddled patrons. I love this movie.
This sounds great.
Yeah.
This sounds great.
It is fantastic, and I would encourage everyone to seek it out. It is a little bit long, which is a little weird to say about a
How long is it?
It's just under 2 hours. It's like an hour 50.
Okay.
But Noah Baumbach's
It's
movies...
It's long for Baumbach.
Yeah, Baumbach's movies tend to be less than 90 minutes, so this is a bit... This is kind of an epic by his standards. But I still would highly recommend it.
I might see this out. I mean, if by some miracle it's playing at the Gateway.
It might, perhaps.
It might, so...
Or you could just use someone's Netflix account. But anyway, and then also on the recommendation of Darren Franich, I watched the first episode of the new Disney XD show DuckTales.
How was that?
It was pretty good. It was pretty good. It's weird. This show has a stacked voice cast. David Tennant plays Scrooge McDuck, which is just perfect casting.
And we also have 20-year-olds supposed to be playing like 10-year-olds.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was about to say, but the issue is Huey, Dewey, and Louie sound like adult men, which is a bit strange.
I think, like, from what little I've seen of it, I'm like, oh, this is weird.
It's a little bit weird. But, the animation is great. I really like the new version of the theme song, which is now going to be stuck in my head for the rest of the day just because I thought about it.
That's what DuckTales does. It just sticks things in your head.
Yeah. It's a little... I feel like it's kind of growing into itself a bit, but it's fun, and if you're interested, if you had any connection to the old show, or if you're just... I didn't, but if you're just also curious like I was, perhaps you should check it out.
I'm curious if, like, I think maybe, like, it'd be worth, like, going into, like, nostalgia. Would it be any value for us to watch DuckTales? That's what I think. Like, the original.
The original, I don't know. I've heard, like, maybe not so much. I mean, I've heard it's okay, but, like, I don't know. That was kind of a cornerstone for, like, the generation before us, not so much our generation. Yeah. It might be worth checking out cornerstones of nostalgia for our generation, although we kind of did that with SpongeBob.
Yeah,
although...
Well, actually, have you ever seen Batman the Animated Series?
I've seen a couple episodes. I was never really a huge Batman the Animated Series person as a kid. But I'm open to checking more of it out. Yeah. And also...
Because that's, like, of, like, that, like, generational cornerstone television, I think Batman the Animated Series and, like, Animaniacs stands on a pedestal, and everything else I don't care about.
Well, the other thing is that people keep telling me I need to watch Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I never did watch.
Yeah, that's something I need to get back to at some point.
Interesting. But anyway, that's all I've got, so should we talk about Blade Runner 2049?
I don't want to just turn into like a riddle-filled ramble, so I want you guys to start this.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
What is it, Reed?
One thing before we go. So I looked it up. One of the screenwriters is Hampton Fancher, who worked on this movie, but also worked on the original Blade Runner.
Yes.
Interesting.
So, I blame him.
Here's the thing about, I will say this, like, I'm not the biggest fan of the original Blade Runner, but I appreciate it.
Who is?
So much. What?
Who is a huge fan of the original Blade Runner? Because I haven't met them.
It's got enough of a cult following for me, like, the fact that this movie exists lets us know that, like, there are people out there who love the original Blade Runner.
Let me qualify this. Like, I know critics love the original Blade Runner, but, like, I have not met anyone personally who, like, even likes it. So...
Yeah. Well, like, here's the thing, like, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but, like, I appreciate it so much fucking more now. Like, I just see, like, everything is doing it, like, man, I see what you're doing, and goddamn it, you do it better than 2049.
Yeah, this movie's not that good.
Gosh, this was a slog.
It's a real slog.
So John and I saw this with Alex and Matthew, and I remember, like, halfway through the movie, Alex went up to go to the bathroom. He comes back sometime later and then asks, "What do I miss?" For me to reply,
like Matthew and I tried to find ways to entertain ourselves, like putting bottles in our mouths, and like anytime there was like a reveal that called back to the other one, we do a fake jerk off motion.
Oh man.
And Good God, I have never been more bored in a cinema.
Yeah. This movie...
And I don't want this to all turn... I don't want to fall into the trap I did when we reviewed 2001, where, like, I just said, like, it's slow, therefore it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I want, like, to qualify this in that, like, all the philosophy is, like, grade school dorm room poster, like, catchphrases. Everything they do regarding replicants has been done in the original film far more concisely and far more entertainingly.
Yeah.
All the I realize everyone's supposed to act like a robot, but you can do that without seeming like you don't care.
I.e. Alicia Vikander in Ex Machina, for instance.
No one fucking watched that fucking Ex Machina before the shit.
Okay, let me say this. The problem with this movie isn't it's slow, therefore it's bad. The problem with this movie is it's slow, and so little fucking happens in this movie that, like, pertains to the actual story that they're telling, that the first hour and a half of this movie is almost entirely a throwaway. Like... Yeah,
it is all just like, isn't this world cool, where all we see of it is just offices. All we see, like, there were, like, a couple of cool bits of, like, Los Angeles, and, like, there's a great little moment of, like, his, like, apparition girlfriend, and, like, he takes her out into the rain, and you see, like, the program recognizing rain textures.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. That is, like, a great use of, like, what this movie wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else is just kind of just, like, long, ponderous shots of pretty bland futurism with Ryan Gosling looking, like, really, really bored.
Great shots, though.
Yeah.
That Roger Deakins.
It's actually, even that, like, I mean, I love Roger Deakins. We all love Roger Deakins.
Yeah.
The man can't do anything wrong. But, you know, like, the original Blade Runner got weird. It had, like, shit, like, backlighting to all the hell, like, smoke coming up. It had, like, the Rutger Hauer scene at the end where, like, the rain is pouring down. You just, like, get, like, contrasting blues. Is one of the most gorgeous moments in cinema history.
Yeah.
There is nothing in this movie like that.
Yeah.
There is nothing in this movie nearly as iconic. It's just, like, pretty.
I will say that those scenes in, like, Jared Leto's weird, cavernous office are kind of cool.
That's really, that looks great.
Yeah.
Though Jared Leto is fucking abysmal.
I was gonna say, that first scene with Jared Leto is one of the worst scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
I'm so sorry. Oh, Tyler, is there a movie where Jared Leto was good?
I don't know! I haven't seen Dallas Buyers Club, so honestly, I don't know.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Reed?
I was gonna say that there's that weird replicator scene with Jared Leto.
Yeah.
He's in this movie? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so Jared Leto's chairman character captured replicant only to stab it. What's the
For seemingly no reason.
Okay.
I mean,
well, here's the thing about it. I think this is kind of the movie in a nutshell, because, like, you get this moment where, like, we see a replicant be born.
Yeah.
And it's like a weird synthetic version of, like, an actual birth. Like, it's like they're in, like, this plastic bag and they come out and it's, like, full of psychosexual imagery.
Yeah.
But, like, then the movie just doesn't know what to do with that and just, like, has just Jared Leto talking about nonsense philosophy and stabbing it in the gut for no reason.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, like, God, I hate the speeches in this movie.
Oh, the speeches in this movie are really not good.
Like, God, like, you have 4 letters as your binary code. I have only 2. 1 and 0. Twice is elegant.
Okay, look. God, what was the point I was trying to land on here?
I'll give you space and let you do that.
I'm trying to think. Okay, so, like, let's talk about the structure of this movie. Like, the first act of this movie is, like, I think an hour and a half. Like,
that's what it feels like.
I think it actually is. Like,
I think it is. I think you're right.
The main, like, kind of plot thrust of this movie doesn't kick in until, like, at least an hour and a half into the movie. And then Harrison Ford doesn't come in until, like, the 2-hour mark. At which point there's 45 minutes left, and you're like, what is going on?
And, like, the, like, final climax is just, like, you just kind of think to yourself, like, is this the climax? Is this really what we've been building to?
And it's weird, because, like, this movie's been out for a while, so we're going full spoilers here. The whole, we never cared anyway. The whole plot of this movie, like, centers on, like, Harrison Ford and Rachel, the replicant he ran away with at the end of the first movie.
Yeah.
They had a child together somehow, and Ryan Gosling is apparently that child. So you spend or
so we think.
Well, okay, I'm getting to that. We spend most of the movie building this emotional arc around Ryan Gosling, like finding his identity and reconnecting with his quote-unquote father, and then we find out in a pull-out, like in a twist moment that I actually didn't see coming. But
neither did I.
So it's genuinely surprising, but like, oops, turns out he's not. So like, good twist, but you just undercut the entire emotional arc of the movie and of your supposed protagonist.
Yeah, like, Ryan Gosling has nothing to do in the rest of the movie after that.
And
the movie might as well end there.
Yeah, and the movie changes focus so many goddamn times that you're like, what is supposed to be the point of this? Like, there's a fucking, like, 7-minute scene of his hologram girlfriend, like, integrating with a, like, replicant to, like, have sex with him. And you're like, why is this happening? Like, how does this tie into anything? Like, what?
What? Oh, yeah. What's the Spike Jonze AI movie called again?
Her
already did that.
Yeah, no, that's
verbatim and so much better.
That scene is, like, right out of the sex surrogate scene in Her.
Right out of
which is very,
that's all I could think. It was like, wow, this is a discount version of Her.
Yep.
In fucking Blade Runner.
And we didn't even like Her that much.
I guess I just come down. God, I can't even remember what I was going to get so angry about.
It's just, it's so strange, and it's
I was going to say this as far as, like, when Harrison Ford enters this movie, it is such a whiplash, because you see, like, Harrison Ford is giving a terrible performance. He so doesn't care, but, like, just by proxy of him, he has so much more charisma and so much more fervor in his performance.
Yeah.
That it is just like, it is like he has just come out of a different movie.
Yeah.
And just biting scenery.
Which is not to say that Ryan Gosling is not a charismatic actor, but, like, he is not allowed to show any of that in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, like, say what you will about him in La La Land, but charming dude. He sells that. He's
charming as fuck in La La Land.
Yeah, charming dude. And, like, in this, it's just, he just looks bored. He doesn't know how to do, like, disinterested, like, sort of disconnected but naive.
Yeah.
Which is like what everyone does for androids now, which is just like disconnected but naive.
Yeah, this movie is just, it's so boring. And my roommate and I were talking about this. Like, wouldn't you have been much more interested? Wouldn't it have been a much better story to, like, see, like, a bunch of replicants trying to hide, like, a replicant hybrid baby? Like, wouldn't that have been such a much better movie?
The backstory of this movie is way more interesting than what we see. Like, blackout, everything goes offline. Society is ruptured. There's a fucking android child, and, like, we don't know how that happened. How did that happen? What do we do? And it's all just, like, backstory that people blandly talk about in poorly lit rooms.
Yeah. Yeah. This movie's not good.
Fuck this movie.
This movie really made me realize that, like, Denis Villeneuve is not a great director. He is only as good as the script he's making allows him to be. And his stylism is elevated by Roger Deakins, and, like, that's about it.
Yeah, like, were it not for Roger Deakins, I think I would have hated this movie even more.
Yeah. Yeah. Reed, do you have anything else to say?
Also, after the movie, us.
I just started screaming because I've never had a movie where I wanted to scream at it more.
That's not the point, but yes. How we were going going through all these reviews, and then they were saying, "Oh, this movie is great. Oh, you better go see this. Oh, this movie is great."
Oh yeah, all those like YouTube spots.
Fuck you. And two, where are you pulling this from?
I don't know. This keeps happening. Like, so many fucking movies this year the critics have loved, and I've been so underwhelmed by. I don't understand why this is happening.
I'm just genuinely like, how did audiences like this? This is one of the slowest movies I've seen in fucking years. Like, how are the plebeians entertained?
Are
how
they?
This make money?
Are they? Because this movie hasn't been doing super great at the box office.
It's still technically the number one movie of the year, which I think speaks more to what isn't out at the moment, but good God.
I don't know.
So, yeah, we didn't like it.
Suffice it to say.
Controversial opinion, I think I felt more dead after that movie than on November 9th, 2016.
Jesus.
Good God,
Oof.
yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, that is like, were it not for like me and Matthew just doing like fake jerk-off motions whenever a reveal was made, that would have been the worst theater experience I've ever had.
Oh, man. I mean, I liked it more than Kingsman 2.
Oh! Speaking of that, like, I think I wanted this. I forgot to tell you guys about this, but like when we went to go see the movie, there's like this big promotional like cardboard cutout for Kingsman, and like the villain who forces cannibalism is holding a fucking burger in the promotional material.
That's a cannibal burger. That's a cannibal burger.
And I just thought to myself, like, what the fuck were they thinking?
Well, to be fair, that's only apparent if you've seen the movie. So
yeah, I'm just like,
you'll only recoil in horror after you've already been through the horrific experience that is Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
Yeah. Oh, God, good God.
I mean, personally, I like the huge 16:9 movie poster of murder on the Orient Express.
Murder, yeah, it just murder on the Express, but murder. I'm actually curious how that turns out, but
I'm not so sure, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, it is. I like trains, Tyler. I like trains.
I like trains too.
Are we ready to talk about the main entree of the series? So I think honestly we had more to talk about with Blade Runner 2049.
Boy, this is going to be all kinds of rants today. What do we want to talk about first?
Reed, do you want to talk about the thing you didn't see, or like front load the thing you did see? Because either way, you're going to be stuck in silence.
Front load. I'm always stuck in silence. That's a mood. It's okay.
Okay. So, The Invitation.
The Invitation, 2016, directed by Karin Kusama, director of such noted films as Jennifer's Body and others. This movie's not that great. Okay, all right. Let me.
I'll let you. I'll let you.
Yes.
My first thing. What the fuck does hitting and killing a coyote have to do with anything?
Fucked if I know.
Yeah, it's innocence. It's the theme of innocence being destroyed. I don't know. Who the fuck knows?
A coyote with a tire iron.
I don't know. Okay. So
what's the plot, Tyler?
Okay, so this movie concerns leading man Logan Marshall Green and his new girlfriend going to a dinner party in the Hollywood Hills, being thrown by his ex-wife and her new paramour. They arrive there. It's a bunch of people they know, and one person is suspiciously running late. A couple people they don't know show up, including the great John Carroll Lynch. Everyone's favorite Zodiac killer, John Carroll Lynch. So basically, they show up to this house and they kind of hang out for a while, and gradually it is revealed that Logan Marshall Green's ex-wife, her name is Eden. Eden and her new boyfriend are basically in some kind of a death cult, and they are trying to recruit all their friends to join the death cult.
Yeah, and they like sit down, they show me YouTube video about somebody dying,
And
I think I remember like after watching this movie, I remember scrolling through like the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, and I think one of them summed up pretty much my thoughts for that. Is that like if your ex-wife showed you a video about how they're now in a death cult, would you stay?
I probably would not. I probably would not.
This movie's so weird.
It's very strange, and also like you basically suspicious things just pile up one after the other as they do in these kinds of movies. You get
only one character seems to notice them or care about them.
That is very strange. Well, only Logan Marshall Green, who I will say, one of the things I really liked about this movie was him and his performance, because he is operating on the level that I wish everyone in this movie was operating on.
There's also like a really interesting part of the movie, which it almost kind of wants to turn us on its head and say like maybe he's like the projecting one, maybe he's not all there because we find there's a reveal about saying like he lost his kid they lost their kid, him and his ex-wife. And like there's sort of ideas about like how to come to terms with that, and how like his ex-wife through the weird death cult has just been completely moved on from that.
You know, that whole thing, you know, that whole backstory about the son dying is kind of teased out gradually.
Yeah.
In a way that I do generally find kind of cloying, and
I just want them to quit the foreplay. Tell me the kid died.
It's
that's the interesting part of the movie.
It is I did think it was kind of corny at first, but I will say that does lead to that actually like really good scene where he like sits down with his new girlfriend and is like, "Hey, like I lost my kid. Like I'm super fucked up and I can't really do anything about that."
Yeah. There's also like this the weird, interesting scene where like he goes into his kid's bedroom and like he hallucinates him and so forth, and like there's lots of like kid hallucinations throughout the house.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But I guess it just comes down to, like, the internal logic of this movie is, I think we've already said this, is that the movie says, like, oh yeah, Will's acting weird here. He's the one who's acting weird, and then he's justified at the end. Whereas, like, no, he's the only one acting normal. He's the only one who feels like a human being throughout this entire thing.
Yeah.
The reveal just, like, it isn't a reveal. It just tells us what we already knew. It's just like, we saw this the moment they showed us the death cult video.
I don't know. I do kind of like that moment where he kind of like blows up at everybody, and then like the guy who was running late, who he thought they might have killed, like shows up and is totally fine.
Nice moment. Nice little moment, but then it goes nowhere. They do nothing with it.
Yeah.
Then it just goes into weird, oh no, death cult violence, everyone's a serial killer, la-di-la-di-la.
And like, I think the biggest problem with this movie is that like, it's not a horror movie until, like, the last 20 minutes. And...
Yeah, until then, it's just kind of a shitty, like, Hollywood Hills movie.
Well, yeah, and, I mean, well, hey, they got a great house in the Hollywood Hills to shoot this thing in.
Great house in the Hollywood Hills, yep.
But, yeah, up until that point, it's just kind of a really, like, awkward and awkwardly acted, like, kind of like, dinner party thing.
Yeah, they kind of go back to, like, what we were saying about, like, acting in 2049. As far as like, it's the sort of like you can do like disinterested and sort of disconnected while still feeling like a human.
Yeah.
While still being like entertaining and like involving to watch.
Yeah.
And then very few of these actors were able to do that. Everyone else just kind of seems like awkward archetypes, just kind of like tiptoeing about.
None of these actors seem like they're real people.
No, yeah, they're all just like weird archetypes. That's all they are.
It's so stilted, and the dialogue is so not good, and like
the dialogue so fucking much. It's so terrible.
It sounds like they went to the Reed School of Screenwriting.
Oh, Reed, don't insult yourself. Your dialogue's way fucking better than this. You know how to write humans.
Yeah, it's all very, very strange, and
yeah, but I will defend the filmmaking.
The filmmaking is
interesting,
pretty good. And this movie has kind of a look to it that I don't really like, which is the like cheap indie look where they shot it on like a digital camera and didn't really do like that great of a job color grading it, and like it all just kind of
like
looks
everything's just kind of orange and like all like and like every time you see a blue, it's like that kind of teal color.
or like it's just a completely like flooding the frame kind of blue, like in the flashbacks.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know, but like the way it's filmed is actually very good. It's very stately. There's a lot of like kind of fluid camera movements.
Yeah, there's kind of like, I think there's like a really interesting moment of filmmaking where like there's the weird dinner scene at Will's kind of.
Oh, I love that. I love that scene.
That's great. That's great. I'm like, man, I wish you could do this more.
Yeah, like this is just a great scene where like they're all eating dinner and like you do close-ups on like people's mouths eating the slightly raw steak and like the wine splashing everywhere. Like that's all good stuff. I do enjoy that.
That's great. It makes everyone seeming non-human actually work for a moment.
Yeah, but on the whole, like this movie, it's just like not that interesting. It's not super well written.
It's pretty boring.
It's very boring, and
it's pretty boring.
What the fuck is the ending? What the fuck is that last scene?
Oh, that stupid fucking ending.
Okay, I liked the ending.
Lambs.
I liked the ending. So basically the end of this movie is that, like, Will, Logan Marshall Green, and his girlfriend have killed everybody else in the house. And, they basically stand out in the backyard, like, looking out on the Hollywood Hills. And they see everyone's backyard has an identical, like, red lantern in it that you saw one of the guys light earlier. And helicopters and police sirens and screaming. Basically, everyone else in the Hollywood Hills apparently has joined the death cult.
And what?
I don't know, man. I kind of like it. It's a fun little twist to end the movie on.
Yeah,
but
I just think it's like, okay.
I will say it's
commentary about Hollywood Hills. Everyone's in a death cult, Tyler. You need to know this while you live out in LA. Everyone's gonna join a death cult.
I mean, I do think it's the kind of twist that would work better to end like a 10-minute student film rather than a 90-minute feature. But because, like, honestly, if this were like a short film that I saw like in film school, it would be a very good short film.
Yeah, I'd really like it if it was just like weird things happen and it's like this kind of linear graph into just utter insanity. That might be kind of fun, but just as is, it's just kind of bloated, awkward, and just kind of all over the place.
It is stretched pretty thin.
Yeah.
So,
but
there you go.
Reed, what are your final thoughts?
I mean, probably some of the best parts about like it really encapsulating the horror genre is the cyanide wine. And then them running around.
Don't drink the wine! Don't drink the wine!
and then them running around from the others for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I don't know. Other than that, I wanted to stop and I think around the 40-minute mark, I said we're not that far away from being prepared to watch The Room.
You know what? I would have rather watched The Room.
I wouldn't go quite that far because I have watched The Room, and that's 2 hours of my life that I'm never getting back. But
granted, on that note, funny bad movies only work in short dosages. It is not a good idea to actually sit down and watch one of those.
Yeah,
I learned that with The Happening.
Yeah. But so there you go.
It is. We watched a movie. It was.
I want Karen Kusama to work with better screenplays. I think is the moral here.
Yeah, that's about where I'd be. But are we ready for the other horror picture we saw? And I think is this kind of where we're gonna dive deep into like horror modernity? Yeah, because I kind of watched The Invitation and I was kind of like, well, okay, the acting wasn't that great, the dialogue wasn't that great, but like maybe this is just something unique to this movie. Mm-hmm.
And then I watched 2011's You're Next. And the acting wasn't that great, and the dialogue wasn't that great, and I was kind of like...
The filmmaking wasn't very good.
Well, I think you and I definitely liked this movie more than you did.
Yeah,
but
to me, it was a case of like, I don't think we've seen a worse movie on this podcast. I really don't think. I was thinking back to everything... I was thinking about everything we've watched. I'm like, man, I don't think I've cared less about a movie we've seen.
I was going to say, I would say The Invitation is took the cake.
No, I mean, like, because I was thinking about, like, man, at least Tomorrowland had some entertainment value.
I like Tomorrowland quite a bit, but that's a different conversation.
Oh, but objectively, I think that movie's awful.
Oh, that movie's not good, but
yeah.
Okay, so your next concerns another basically like big group of people gathering.
In the big creepy mansion.
Creepy mansion out in the middle of the woods this time, and also this time they're all related.
Yep.
And basically they face
like the dad. Like, what's the dad do again?
I don't know. The parents are like super wealthy, and all their kids and their significant others are coming to visit for like an anniversary celebration. Mm-hmm. They all get together. There's a terrible dinner scene.
Oh my god!
That fucking guy who goes like, the commercial is the pinnacle of the art form. I'm like, who thinks that? What even like non-artistic, like not movie liking person thinks that commercials are better than watching TV?
Adam Wingard, is there an alien at boy? Is this subtext we're supposed to know?
I don't know.
That is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in a horror movie.
It's very strange. So basically, then they face a home invasion by a few guys in animal masks.
Mm-hmm.
Nice kind of.
All the death scenes are terribly shot.
This movie is very much a like mostly handheld kind of not super. This movie cost $1 million.
Lots of look. There's lots of disconnect between. Oh, it's unstable. In the most boring way.
I guess the thing with this movie, this movie made me wonder. I guess like the dialogue and characters are kind of beside the point in these horror movies. Is that what we're supposed to gather? Because like I will say the actual like scares and like deaths in this movie, even if they're not shot super well, are like pretty creative. I think
there are some. There is like the scene of like Home Alone-esque where she runs up like the hammered boards and there is stuff like that and But we spent so much fucking time with them just talking. Like, not as much in this movie as like insane death stuff as you'd like.
Well, you didn't finish this movie.
No.
So this movie becomes a horror film like much more quickly than The Invitation does, and most of the last like hour plus of this movie is devoted to like just kind of escalating grotesquerie and gruesome deaths and whatnot.
Well, I saw most of that. Don't worry. I don't think there isn't much in this movie I did not see.
Okay. Well, yeah, there is a lot of talking in this movie, which again, like the dialogue in this movie is really not very good.
Who wrote this?
Actually, I've met the screenwriter of this movie.
Oh, have you? Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he seems like an interesting gentleman, but I don't know. It's weird because I do like kind of the central conceit of this movie. Like home invasion movies are a genre that like I haven't seen really any of them, but it's a premise that kind of strikes me as something that I find appealing. Like, I kind of like the idea of, like, people being beset by a mysterious outside force and kind of having to defend their home. I kind of like all that.
There's something about that, yeah.
I kind of like I like the trappings of this movie, like the people in animal masks and whatnot.
That is a creative thing. Is like that's like the general look of it. Like they're using crossbows.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Also, this is one of those movies where like they could only afford one song, but the song they pick is a pretty good choice.
Pretty good song.
Yeah, it's a good choice. I feel like it fits the movie nicely.
I guess like where I'm at is that like because like people watch these like fucking like Adam Wingard horror films and they like see something. Well, not transgressive, but something sort of ironic or self-aware about them.
Yeah.
And I have no idea why. I don't know what they're talking about. Because you just they do the final girl pretty unironically. They do the sort of serial killer thing pretty unironically.
Well, maybe it's like, I don't know, like the final girl of this movie, like, grew up in, like, a survivalist compound or something.
Yeah, there's that.
That's an element I kind of like.
That's a thing.
It, like, explains why she's so resourceful, at least, although...
Yeah. I mean, like, if I thought she had character, I'd like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I actually thought of anyone as a human being, I might think that was, like, a decent trait.
I don't know, and, like, it's just kind of... I guess it comes from, like, the kind of, like, slight vein of, like, black humor that kind of runs through this thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's one thing I saw in the reviews.
Like, that scene where, like, the girl is, like, slow-mo running, like, toward the door, like, she's gonna have to, like, run through, like, a hail of arrows, like, once she gets out the door. But, like, no, she just, like, hits the doorway and falls backward, and you see, like, a steel wire, like, stretched across the doorway that, like, just, you know, sliced her throat open. I don't know. Stuff like that is kind of cool.
There's that, yeah. Yeah, that exists.
I don't know. I found this movie, yes, to be, like, fairly inconsequential, but there were elements of it and, like, kind of some creativity in the scenarios that I did find kind of appealing.
Okay. I was just pretty bored. Really bored. Inhumanly bored. I just didn't care about, like, anyone. I didn't give a shit about, like, the twist where, like, oh no, like, one of the brothers is the killer, la-de-la.
Well, one of the brothers, like, hired these killers to take down his family so he could inherit all the money.
Yeah, he can inherit all the money. Yeah, I don't care about that. I think, like, no matter what creativity there is, like, it's all shot just so, like, ooh, shaky cam terribleness.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just hard to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a no man's land of a movie.
I don't disagree, but I did find it... I mean, I do appreciate... I'm
not going to say there's, like, nothing to be entertained by.
Yeah, I do appreciate the value of, like, the filmmaking and stuff in The Invitation, probably more, but, like, I found this movie to be, like, vastly more entertaining than most of The Invitation.
Okay, so there you got that out of it. There you go.
Which, you know, with a horror film, I don't know how much more you can ask than that.
I guess. I think maybe just the lesson I've learned is that, like, I don't care about the slasher film.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just a bug in my cinema watching eye.
No, I mean, that's something else I've kind of found about myself. And it's hard for me. Like, I have not been super interested in, like, seeing a lot of these modern horror films. Mm-hmm. It's something I've had to kind of go out of my way to look into. And, like, I don't care how many good reviews it gets, I still don't want to see Don't Breathe.
No, don't want to see that. I just don't want to, because, like, well, that's the problem, is that, like, so, like, I think these films seem to, like, relish in their archetypalness, and, like, I'm just not entirely sure what the, not so much, like, what the value of that is, but, like, what the, like, entertainment value in that is.
I don't know, it's just, I think people just enjoy, like, the visceral, like, thrill of, you know, being scared and seeing people, you know, get stabbed, and people, I think a lot of people tend to be more affected by, like, gruesome violence than we do.
Whereas, like, we watch gruesome violence and we go, oh, cool, look at those great makeup effects.
Right. Right.
So, like, maybe there is, like, we just don't, just, like, our critical eye doesn't allow for, like, these visceral viewing that these things kind of tend to wish for. But then again, like, lots of critics likes these things, so, like, I don't know what's going through their head. Are they, like, tracking, like, what kind of visceral joys are there in this, instead of, like, looking for, like, the normal, like, criteria you bring to a movie? Are we just working off of a different script that I didn't know about?
I don't know. I mean, you know, Roger Ebert always said he tried to judge a movie, like, based on what it was trying to do, and, you know, that's important.
Yes,
but,
it is.
You know, maybe you could just...
Well, what these movies are trying to do is boring.
Maybe you could, like, have some actual characters. Like, I don't know.
Maybe I can try to care. Yeah. Maybe the filmmaking can't be wank.
Look, I mean, Get Out showed that you could make a very cheap movie and still have, like, really good dialogue, really good characters.
The characters are great. You care. It's funny. It's the action is fucking incredible. And the world they build is so interesting.
Yeah.
I think maybe we're just learning Get Out's a great movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, It's all owed to Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like Jordan. Oh yeah, so it's granted the trailers for Get Out looked terrible, and like when it actually did come out with like a 99%, I'm like, oh, well, I'll be.
I didn't see any of the trailers, so
Yeah.
I was pleasantly.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised as well.
I was just pleasantly taken completely by surprise.
Goody. So, is this it for horror modernity week?
I thought maybe we would do a couple weeks of this, but I think that would just be ill-advised at this point.
Yeah, I think we drank our medicine and it tastes like grape shit.
But there's a lot of great in the canon horror movies that we haven't seen, so I think we're gonna check out a couple of those next week.
Yes. I just love how we just both had like the same visceral reaction when you said like Rosemary's Baby. Yes. The Exorcist. Yes.
Yep, that's basically exactly what I wanted to do. So next week we'll be hopping back to the late 60s, early 70s to look at a couple all-time horror classics. Namely,
I think like few movies are more in the canon than like The Exorcist.
Yeah, which somehow I just still haven't seen.
I guess not. We're young people. We weren't allowed to watch a lot of this shit growing up.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll be looking at William Friedkin's The Exorcist, starring our old friend Max von Sydow, and also Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby, which I've been itching to see for some time now.
Yeah, like I don't know nearly as much about that as I do The Exorcist, so I'm curious. I might actually do research this week.
Ooh.
And actually care about what the filmmaker is.
Oh boy, yes. I've seen shockingly few Polanski movies.
With Polanski, I've seen bits and pieces of The Pianist. I've seen Chinatown.
Okay.
I think that's about it for Polanski.
I've seen all of The Pianist and Chinatown, so we're about on equal footing here.
What?
He has also seen The Pianist.
Okay, so alrighty, so hopefully good movies next week.
I think so. Hopefully we will not be resoundingly disappointed.
Although we had some pretty good conversations this week. I think this had value all its own.
This was a worthwhile exercise, if not a particularly entertaining one. I might still watch It Follows. We'll see.
We'll see what happens when we actually get around to closer to Halloween itself.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for on this journey, and
it's been a pleasure to be in your grace.
Yeah. And we'll see you next time, and we'll hopefully have less to rant about. Although maybe you enjoy our rants. Who's to say?
People kind of go onto the internet to see snooty old guard film critics sneer their lips at stuff. That's just kind of like a Schadenfreude thing that people go to the internet for. I think
that is true. Hey, leave a comment telling us if you like our rants. How about that? All four of you out there who watched our last video, which I think is the three of us and one other person.
Just message Schadenfreude and just send it to us and we'll know what you mean.
Sure. Why not? Also, I want to shout out that person who left a comment on our social network video, which was called An Accidental Masterpiece. He commented, "Nothing accidental here." So... I'm not sure I agree with you, mysterious commenter, but thank you for engaging with us.
I don't agree with you either, but thank you for being a part of our weekly bullshit rants.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Reed, are you okay?
Uh-oh.
I think his brain just been burrowed out by the boredom of the movie.
I think his internet has frozen or something.
Oh, God.
Reed, are you there?
Reed.
He can't hear you. Are you there?
You come up to speed. I'm going to plug in a charger.